two, three. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Oh, it's root for the Cubbies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Hey!
This is
on the 25th of March 2019, the Monday morning quarterback from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Boston Red here from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. We always pay homage to Jerry Pippin, who died in March of 2015. Nonetheless, as we roll along here, the Barr report, as it's called, it's a summary of the Mueller report. We had a special on it. I encourage you to tune into it. It can be heard, I should say, on many of the same outlets that we have here: Spreaker, iHeart, Stitcher, YouTube, and many more too numerous to mention. We've been working continuously here on a new broadcast server. It's about finished now, and we can switch to it. It's a very interesting server in that it is all open source software. They are mostly open source software. We have two of them actually. One is running the Slackware distribution, and then we have one on Ubuntu. So we get the best of both worlds as far as our actual production is concerned. We still use Audacity along with some other things, and we'll be highlighting those as we move along. It'll move us more in line with other internet broadcasters that have been utilizing open source tools. A lot of the open source tools are, of course, geared towards YouTube. We'll get in that space as we move along. We're there now, but we'll move into video part of YouTube and start to build the channel. We also have a numbers man broadcast from the financial channel. This Week in Economics is out, and we've really been moving along here with a number of things that we normally would have not produced. We still have Senator Kirsten Gillibrand announcement from the Trump Hotel in Manhattan. We'll get that up shortly here, next day or so. And our open source report, which is now 90% finished, we'll get it up also. But now we need to take care of the business at hand. The Mueller report, we will put the PDF, courtesy of the Washington Post, on this show also, and you can look at the actual 4-page PDF, which is a summary by the Attorney General William Barr. Republican's been around a very, very long time, appointed by DJ Trump. And the crux of it is there was not a criminal case of conspiracy or collusion against DJ Trump, at least in his summary. Obstruction, I should say. Now, there could be some collusion. That is a different matter there. There are grand juries in New York that are still impaneled, and they're investigating different parts of the DJ Trump empire and various other characters on the periphery. But this long, over 2-year investigation, as we heard from the NPR, we rarely listen to NPR, but they were saying, and we've seen a lot of the other Western media, including the BBC, have declared it overnight. We will listen to the World on BBC, a DJ Trump victory, as they have framed it. It's kind of interesting where these media outlets, the BBC, which is independent of the British government, has become a more conservative over the years, as it now takes commercials on its site. Fortunately, it hasn't got commercials on the BBC World Service. But it is probably coming. The National Public Radio, their news gathering has become more conservative. I was listening to an interview there with their congressional correspondent and Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut, and the reporter was very argumentative with Senator Blumenthal. First of all, one has to comprehend that the Republicans control the Senate, therefore the Judiciary Committee. So anything that comes up there will have the grace, what do you want to call it, of the Republican leadership, no doubt about it. So there's no reason to quibble over what will happen there. But now, as far as the full report of Robert Mueller is concerned, there is efforts on behalf of both parties in Congress to bring it out in its full form. Now, there'll be some redactions there as to methods, not very much methods, but people who have not been indicted. But basically will be a more interesting read, and when it does come out, parts of whatever comes out, they will, the media will spin it in various ways, as you've heard various pundits spin the report. We read the actual report from William Barr, and it is semi-climactic in its brief form. It states the number of attorneys involved, numbers of witnesses, all nice round figures there, but that in itself is not impressive. In the number of FBI agents, usually in something of this nature, there would have been more FBI agents involved because you would have more regional offices. We assume most of the agents here were out of Washington, D.C., the headquarters, perhaps some in New York. But at the same time, when you present that, it is only a summary, and it only quotes actually one paragraph. As far as the collusion is concerned, they left that open. Obstruction they could not make illegal. Now, this is how it is in Barr's summary, because of the bar under the federal rules of criminal procedure, and that in itself is one of those issues that you get and you take it at heart. We at this mic have been constantly stating that the whole episode of Russian interference by the corporate media and by some elements within the Democratic Party has been overblown, and the emphasis when other things that could happen. Now, when they were operating in the House as a minority party, they could afford to do that. Now that they have the majority in the House, they need to move on to what LBJ would call good works. And those are issues like health care. And under the subtitle there, prescription drugs. Dealing with the Facebooks of the world, etc., and privacy. Those are the kinds of things that are out there. Payday loans. There's a lot of legislation that they can get up in this pre-election year 2019 as we go into an election year. Now, on the election front, Bernie Sanders was in Ventura County in Northern California, large crowd there. And one of the songs, you'll hear lots of this, and you'll hear probably some here, Sarah Guthrie. She is the granddaughter of Woody Guthrie, the great folk singer, and This Land Is Your Land, This Land is My Land. I'm glad that they made this a primary part of Bernie's campaign. as Bernie differentiates himself from these various other characters on the scene. Now, be very leery of some of these people that talk about Medicare for all, a single payer, and a path to it. Depends on what their path is. Now, don't be confused. The path that many of the candidates lay out will not be the legislative path. That is a totally different situation. Their administration could put out a broad blueprint, but would the Congress follow it? Well, that will obviously depend. But progress could be made in stabilizing the Affordable Care Act. Those attempts could be made this year, and then moving on towards some type of a single payer system. The a candidate out of South Bend, Indiana, has talked about some type of medical care for all type of program, but what he's talking about, Bullinger, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, what he's talking about is letting people keep the insurance that they have with their employer, and leaving the option for people that do not have insurance or that want to move to the single payer option. That is effectively two things. Effectively, that is what the Obamacare situation is now, with some of the details taken out. Christine Gillibrand has her Medicare for all too. Also there, a little bit different formula of it. Amy Klobuchar has something going on there. And some of this will be flushed out in the coverage up to the Democratic debates, but because there's so many people will be on the stage in the debate, you probably will not get a lot out of that particular situation. But come the Iowa primaries, and because the American political process, there is a very long period. You start out in February in Iowa. It'll be a little bit shorter this year. Usually it would go to June, but the California primaries moved to Super Tuesday also, so you'll have a lot of states deciding in March, and most will be finished up by April. On the sports scene, the Sweet 16 has been cemented, and the usual suspects are on their way there. We'll talk about this in our coverage. We'll go now to the Washington Post. Well, firstly, let's just get one little thing here. The yield curve, that is a bond curve, is flattening, and some statements by the Fed chair, Charles Evans, on Monday was understandable for the market to be nervous when the yield curve flattens there. That is usually a precursor to a recession. Now, this will have more effect on the DJ Trump administration than anything else. You have a global slowdown. It's been acknowledged by all of the predictive elements, pundits, analysts, etc. And a little bit of this, a bad omen for the economy. Yields on the benchmark, a 10-year Treasury fell below the 3-month rate on Friday for the first time since 2007. That's when the Depression started, after an unexpected rise in the Info Institute Munich Business Climate Index in Germany. Spreads between the 3-year and the 10-year turn positive. He described it as inversion as pretty narrow. This is Evans. We have to take into account there has been a secular decline in long-term interest rates, Evans said in comments at the Credit Suisse Asian Investment Conference in Hong Kong. This is after the Fed signaled an end to its tightening and abandoned plans for further rate hikes in 2019. Some of this is structural, having to do with lower trend growth and lower real interest rates. Some interest rates, incidentally, in the negative. We won't get into too much here. On the sideline of the conference, he told, this is MSNBC, in the interview, that he could understand why investors were watchful, waiting, and looking. Adding the Fed was doing the same, but he added that economic fundamentals were good, and he expects growth to be around 3%. What that means, it could be below 3% also. We thought we'd throw this in. We're trying to integrate our broadcast as much as possible. The same came from the Wall Street Journal. Inverted curve is telling investors what they already know, and I won't go into this. We may have a special report on the financial channel on this particular situation here. Let me get to the, we'll start with the Washington Post here. Primarily we're working from here and around here. The jackpot for the Powerball is now $750 million, in the fourth largest in U.S. history. A great man once said, never tell him the odds. We're sorry to inform you that the odds of winning the Powerball are 1 in 292. 292, 201, 33, and nobody beats bets this time around. Anyway, the numbers announced Friday night, we'll just give those 24, 25, 52, and 60, and 66, a Powerball of 5. No ticket of those numbers were sold, so the pot, the Malta State Lottery, is now $750 million. It is the fourth largest in U.S. history. While players match all winning numbers to win the grand prize, some did in fact earn the $2 million and $1 million prize. We did not play Powerball, period. Now, the Mega Million, somebody did finally come forward there, the $1.5 billion Mega Million prize. So this will be the prize on, I believe, let me make sure that I'm straight here. Well, let me see, Saturday. I think this is what, on a Wednesday? Yeah. Is the fourth largest, match all the numbers here. And on Wednesday. Okay, we got Powerball out of the way. Some will win, some will not win. And we'll skip old Peter Bullengard, or whatever his name is here. He's Maltese, so I'm not butchering his name. Doesn't really matter very much. Incidentally, some commercials have already started to run against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, otherwise known as AOC. Somebody named Michelle Mix is running for Congress. Where is this clown running from? Anyway, let's just hear a little bit of this. We should hear a little bit of that.
I'm Michelle Nix, and I approve this message because I'll stand up to socialism.
Anyway, Michelle Nix is standing up to socialism. Very important, interesting situation there. There'll be some more of those ads coming out. She is running for the seat of the late Walter Jones, who was more of a libertarian. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. And move on. We'll get back to March Madness before we do the sports. This is the Washington Post, his take of it. And 6 takeaways from the Barr letter. It's called the Mueller probe. This is by E.J. Dion. We usually feature E.J. Dion at least once a week. The special counsel, Mueller III, has not resolved all the issues surrounding D.J. Trump. Is disappointing many of the president's foes, but not surprising. Mueller is an honorable man. He's not a bomb thrower. He's always defined his role narrowly, and all of Trump's attacks on Mueller, and he's continued assaulting the probe on Sunday night, distracting from the fact that Mueller was not nearly as aggressive as he might have been. For example, subpoenaing him, I would have. First, the full report must be released as quickly as possible. The letter from the Attorney General Barr made clear that on the charge of obstruction of justice, Mueller offered material on both sides of the question. Barr quoted Mueller this way: while the report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So what exactly did Mueller find? The public and Congress need to know. Second, Barr said he and his deputy Rosenstein, who Trump wanted to fire, had concluded that the evidence developed during the special prosecutor's investigation is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. The probe spanned 675 days. It took Barr and Rosenstein only 2 days to let the president off the hook. How did they decide so quickly? The word rush to judgment comes to mind. That's from Gerald Nadler. He's chair of the House Judiciary Committee, said he would call Barr to testify. Third, on the issue of Russian collusion, there was an odd discrepancy between the language Barr used and what he quoted the report is saying. Barr said the special counsel investigation did not find that Trump's campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russian efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. He quoted Mueller as saying the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. The words did not find do not strike me as the same as did not establish. Perhaps I'm parsing words, we call it quibbling, but there are legal matters, and the words establish raises interesting questions. What did Mueller find? Again, this is an argument for making the whole report available quickly. It'll get out there. Fourth, the Congress must continue to hold Trump accountable. Republican efforts to shut down any further inquiries should be laughed away. I pointed out in a recent article, in a recent column, that it has been far better if Congress had been investigating Trump simultaneously with Mueller, which is what happened in Watergate. But just because the House of Representatives ignored their responsibility controlled by the Republicans at the time for oversight when they control the House doesn't mean the Democrats should do the same. As I have argued, what brought Nixon down were the tapes of his White House conversations orchestrating the cover-up. And we learned that the tapes, when his aide Alexander Butterfield, remember Alexander Butterfield, revealed their existence first to the Senate staffers and then in an open hearing. Congress, not the special prosecutor, forced Nixon to resign. Noting Mueller is quoted as saying justified pretending that there is nothing left to probe. And yes, there are still investigations of Trump that will continue in the offices of the U.S. attorneys. That's in the Southern District of New York. Fifth, Mueller should testify before Congress, too. It's important for the public to understand how and why he made the judgments he did during his investigation. Six, we have no idea right now if materials will emerge over the coming months that will justify impeachment. Impeachment is, in any event, a last resort. It's a political matter. In the meantime, everything we have learned about Trump from the Mueller inquiries and from media reports suggests potential corruption, conflict of interest, no doubt conflict of interest, a leader who surrounds himself with shady characters, a teapot dome operation against whom Mueller secured enough for convictions, indictments, and plea deals. The case against Trump is strong. If this case needs to be argued in the political sphere, so be it. The 2020 election is 20 months away. So that in itself is a very, very long time. I looked at an initiative here. Supreme Court considers a partisan gerrymandering, but voters are not waiting. This is out of Michigan, the city of Detroit. Disappointed with election results, but not ready to give up. Katie Fahey has set out a modern-day equivalent of a message in a bottle. That was on November the 10th, 2016. I like to take on gerrymandering in Michigan, she typed in a Facebook post. If you're interested in doing this as well, please let me know. She added a smiling face there. It turned out that hundreds of people were interested. It grew to 450,000 people, one hell of a grassroots situation signed a petition to amend the state's constitution. It grew to 2.5 million on election day in 2018 and took away the power of politicians to draw districts that helped themselves and their political parties and put it in the hands of a commission of ordinary citizens. Vote not politicians made Michigan one of 5 states in 2018: Ohio, Colorado, Missouri, and Utah. The others where voters retained partisan gerrymandering. An issue that is vexed the Supreme Court and returns to justice this week in a case out of North Carolina and Maryland. The referendum in 2008 showed that voters are tired of waiting. This is another instance like Citizens United, where the court is wildly out of step with the public opinion. That's from Josh Silver, co-founder of a nonpartisan group called Represent Us. Anyway, nonetheless, they were able to make it there. And Silver and his group, the Justice Roberts, is doing arguments in these cases, having to referee such partisan fights would put the Supreme Court in an untenable position. Incidentally, there is a new biography out on Justice Roberts, and we'll have to get it and look at it. Incidentally, he is out of Gary, Indiana. I knew he was from Indiana, but I thought he was around Indianapolis. It is a European suburb where he grew up. He's 64 years old. And let me just finish this up here. The proposal survived a challenge to the Michigan Supreme Court that it would make too radical a change to the state's constitution. It was approved by 61% of the voters. The group raised $16 million, around $12 million, which came from liberal-leaning organizations outside of the state. So they got it done in Michigan from a grassroots perspective there in the state of Michigan. Something out of Florida, an absolutely corrupt state. Young Parkland voters' ballots were rejected at a higher rate than the state's average in November. Research finds. This is the Post. Tim Craig. Ronnie Eisenberg was away at college when one of her former neighbors stormed into Margie Stoneman Douglas High School last year and killed 17 people. She watched the aftermath of the tragedy unfold from Syracuse University. Feeling too far away from home, Eisenberg immediately knew she'd have to join other Parkland students in channeling her anger into political support for tougher gun laws. Last March, a month after the shooting, Eisenberg flew from college to Washington to participate in the March for Life. We covered it. About 1 in 7 mail-in ballots submitted by college-age voters in Parkland were rejected or failed to arrive on time. That's according to an analysis. The findings are adding to questions about reliability and fairness of course, the election system there, and it was a flashpoint in the November election. Rick Scott became the senator, and Bill Nelson ran up short. Problem with Eisenberg's ballots were discovered by David Smith, chair of the political science department at the University of Florida, who analyzed the Florida's open source voting file. A veteran researcher of Florida election, Smith said about 15% of the mail-in ballots submitted by Parkland residents between 18 and 21 were never counted in the in the midterm election, far exceeding the state's average. Amongst Floridians between 18 and 21, about 5.4% of mail-in ballots were rejected uncounted, according to Smith. A spokesman, this is in Broward County, they've had problems, did not comment. Amongst the mail-in ballots cast in Broward County, regardless of age, 5,464 ballots were not counted. More than half of those ballots, 3,458, were not accepted because they arrived after Election Day. So they have some systems here. Minor Perez, a voting rights lawyer with New York University Law School's Brenham Center, said more public education is needed to better inform voters about mail-in ballot deadlines. No doubt about that. And election board records examined by Smith shows that Edron, a student at the American University in Washington, requested her ballot on the 27th of October. The records show the ballot was mailed to her on October 30th, and she didn't receive it back until November 17th, 2 weeks after the election. She's certain she had it in the mail. They have big problems with the mails. The mails themselves can be held up in many forms. I've experienced that, included, unfortunately, some postal carriers that do not have clean hands in the process. We'll have to look further at the study here, the open source ballot study that Smith has worked on here. He is chair of the open source voting file. Anyway, we'll check into that. Let me just make sure we haven't missed anything here, and where our time is. We're doing okay. We'll do the March Madness from the Washington Post because we are top seeds. Duke and UNC in the Sweet 16. Virginia Tech advanced for the first time since 1967, a very long time. Took care of number 12 seed Liberty University. I didn't think Liberty would go very far. This year's tournament is in a serious damage of having no Cinderellas. Number 12 Oregon versus UC at Irvine. They fell also. And some of the updates here. Virginia joins number 1 seed in the tournament. Virginia and the number 16 is finally a happy time there. They dispatched Oklahoma 63-51. And Virginia Tech returns to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1967, taking care of Liberty University. Duke survived the scare. It was a 1-point scare, incidentally. Their star Zion Williamson missed a free throw attempt, and UCF came within 1 point of knocking them out of the tournament. And they were like Duke. Anyway, Texas Tech is on the move. They took on Buffalo there, and the Red Raiders defense, which proved a superb in a 20-point win. Well, it was really not a game. And the Tar Heels are there. Their victory over 9th seed University of Washington at Seattle, 81-59. And Tennessee was in an overtime game there that they were able to succumb over Iowa. And what else do we have here? Well, anyway, that is it. So we'll go to the NCAA. The National Basketball League, the scores are from Sunday night. The Lakers won 11-106 over the Kings. The Clippers 124-103 over the Knicks. The Bucks 127-105 over the Cavaliers. The Pacers 124-88. And the Hornets 115-114 over the Raptors. The Rockets 113-90 over the Pelicans. The Spurs 115-96 over the Celtics in Boston. And the Warriors 121-114 over the Pistons. To Major League Baseball. Incidentally, the baseball season will start earlier this year than ever. one of the things we looked at here. Anyway, nonetheless, the Mets 8-4 over the Nationals. The Phillies 11-4 over the Orioles. The Cards 2-1 over the Marlins. Yankees 5-3 over the Twins. The Tigers 18-6 over the Blue Jays. The Astros 5-3 over the Nationals. And Orioles and Pirates 1-1. White Sox 7-3 over Cleveland. Rockies 4-3 over the Reds. The Royals and Rangers were tied up, and this is an unbelievable score here. Cubs 24-6 over the Pirates. Mr. Montgomery was a winner there. I guess he's pitching well. Anyway, the Brewers 3-2 over the D-backs, and the Giants were shut out by the Athletics 5-0. Atlanta 4-2 over the Rays, and the Angels 8-4 over the Dodgers. And this was Major League Baseball. All 30 teams will play on March 28th, the earliest opening day in the history, excluding the international opener. They had that in Japan. It was the Mariners, the Boston Red Sox, and Yankees will play the first ever NBA game in Europe. In June, games in Europe in June the 29th to the 30th from USA Today, if we can get that in. And the scores, we don't want to miss out on anything. That was Duke 77-76 over UCF, Virginia 63-51 over Oklahoma, North Carolina 81-58 over Washington. And in overtime, Tennessee 83-77 over Iowa. And the Texas Tech Red Raiders 78-58, 20-point game over Buffalo. Houston 74-59 over Ohio State. And the Texas Tech Red Raiders 67-58 over Liberty University. And finally, the Oregon Ducks defeated UC Irvine 73-54. So Cinderella fell apart. Anyway, the Blue Jackets and Canadiens, let's see the score there. Blue Jackets 3-0. They shut out the Canadiens. The Capitals 3-1 over the Flyers. The Coyotes were defeated by the Islanders 2-0. And the Canadiens and in overtime and the Hurricanes had more win, 2-1. The Avalanche and Blackhawks again in overtime, Blackhawks 2-1, and that is the National Hockey League. And we'll get to women's basketball here. Yukon 84-72 over Buffalo. Buffalo lost on both sides of the coin. Mississippi State 85-61 over Clemson, and Louisville finally won on the women's side 71-50. Michigan, I should say. The Oregon Ducks walked away with Indiana, number 10 Indiana, 91-58, and Texas A&M 78-76 over Marquette. In South Carolina, 72-64 with Florida State, and the University of Miami was beaten by Florida State, 57-55, and finally Iowa 68-52. We don't have the hockey scores, but we'll get those in from the college ranks. I don't know if we have those. I'd have to look for those, and I cannot find them at this point in time. Anyway, we can't get everything. College of baseball is kicking off also, so we have plenty of sports to look at here. This will do it for the Monday Morning Quarterback on the 25th of March, 2019. From the Jared Pippin broadcast booth, have a good week and good day.
This is Sarah Guthrie, granddaughter of Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Let's sing it together. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, I've roamed and rambled, and I follow my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. All at once. This land is your land. This land is mine. To the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. There was a great high wall there that tried to stop me, and on the wall it said no trespassing, but on the other side it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. There is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, nobody living could ever stop us as we go walking our freedom highway. Nobody